my caddy finally stepped up and said, look, you're going to have to change or I'm going to quit.
Professional golfer Bubba Watson has been known to get angry on the course. But Bubba's a Christian, and God used what his caddy said a few years ago to help him get a new perspective on golf and on winning and losing. Bubba Watson is our guest on this episode of GPS, God, People, Stories. I'm Phil Fleischman.
And I'm Jim Kirkland. Bubba Watson has won at least 2 Masters tournaments. Why the variable there? Why I say at least 2? Because as we're producing this episode of GPS, the 2016 Masters tournament is just getting started. So we don't know whether he will have a third green jacket in his closet this year, but we do know he will be working toward it.
GPS. God. People. Stories.
Jerry Bubba Watson Jr. is 37. He was born and raised in Florida, and he's been playing golf since he was about 6, thanks to his mom.
It was funny. My dad, when I was born, he wanted me to be a baseball player. He's a big baseball player, loved the Yankees. I played baseball when I was 4, started T-ball when I was 4. Then when I turned 6, my dad started playing golf on the weekends. I hadn't really played that much, and my mom said, the only way you can go play on Saturdays, she said, the only way you can play is if you take your son. And he said, no, I don't want to take my son. I don't want to take him because I want to be a baseball player. Golf is, no, he doesn't need to play golf. That's dumb for him to play golf. And so my mom was the boss of the house. And my mom said, then you're not going. He said, okay.
Within a couple of years, Bubba would play his first tournament at the age of 8. Bubba has never taken a golf lesson, and yet he's one of the highest-ranked players in the world. Bubba's also one of only a few left-handed golfers on tour.
When I started, when I was 6 years old, left-handed golfers were unheard of. There wasn't like left-handed golf equipment. It was hard to find. And it just happened that this pro at this golf course was left-handed. So the pro gave me an old club. My dad cut it down, and so I had a left-handed club. And I just followed my dad. My dad drove the cart. Him and his buddies were always in the trees looking for balls and everything. So I just was walking down the fairway at 6 years old with one club in my hand and just hitting it straight up the fairway. And I enjoyed it because it was just hitting the ball.
Neither Bubba nor his dad was a Christian at the time. Bubba gave his life to Christ around his senior year of high school.
It was 2 girls. They were twins that lived right behind me, and our backyards touched. And they didn't have a car to go to school, so they rode the bus. And I had a car, and I said, hey, why don't y'all ride with me to school? So I started taking them to school, and they were going to church right down the street. They were walking to church, and one of the days, one of them asked me I want to go to church with them on Wednesday night. It's about youth and about youth having fun and this and that. And my belief was, oh, man, these people are going to be boring. It's not going to be fun. It's going to take away what I want to do.
Turned out he was wrong. Not only did Bubba enjoy his time at the church, he also connected with what he was learning about Jesus.
After a few times going, I realized that this is what I wanted to do. This is truth here. And so I gave myself to the Lord.
Bubba went to the University of Georgia, and his faith took a backseat to golf and other distractions. That is, until he met a young lady named Angie.
She played basketball, and she grew up in the church back home in Canada. So we started hanging out, started playing some golf, playing some basketball, and one day we were sitting together, and we came to the fact that we wanted to be Christ followers. We wanted to really do the right things, and so we started dating, turning to the Lord for everything, for all our decisions. And finally we got married. We got baptized 3 months later. We got married September 1st of 2004. We got baptized together December 26th of 2004, day after Christmas.
2004 is the year that Bubba says he really got serious about following Christ and following him faithfully. And one of the ways he works to remain faithful while he's on tour is through Bible studies with other Christians in the pro golf community.
It keeps us focused on the right goals. For me to play golf, there's a lot of times we get wrapped up in the everyday life, I guess you'd say. For me, it's a way to get back connected with the Bible and with God and Jesus. And with me, I hired a Christian as my caddy and a Christian as my trainer. That's the people, and obviously my wife, but that's the people I'm with at all times. And so it's easy for me to talk to them about problems and hear their problems and try to help each other.
One of the problems that Bubba says he's struggled with is getting angry and frustrated on the course.
I was so wrapped up in why I'm not winning, why can't I win, what's going on, and just created frustrations in my head and in my life. And, people were telling me, my caddy finally stepped up and said, look, you're going to have to change or I'm going to quit.
That caddy was Ted Scott, and Ted is still Bubba's caddy today. He didn't quit. In fact, Bubba took his words to heart and began digging into the Bible to help get a more biblical perspective on golf and on winning and losing.
Golf doesn't really mean anything, when it comes down to it. We're trying to be a light for other people and show other people.
This is what we're here for. To show the world how you love it. This is what we're here for.
In a recent interview with the CBS News magazine 60 Minutes, Bubba admitted that he doesn't always come across as very likable, but he said it's because he's afraid of crowds. He's uncomfortable around strangers.
That's not the case in the virtual world. For example, on Twitter, Bubba's got more than 1.5 million followers, and he likes connecting with them.
And I just like to always tell them Jesus loves you and write this stuff back to them. And it's just a way for me to really be strong in my faith. And it's just a way to give back and just try to talk to people and just kind of, be there for them and just kind of be different than a normal, I guess, so-called celebrity or athlete.
Bubba Watson won his first Masters tournament in 2012, almost 2 years after his father died of throat cancer. Jerry Watson Sr. was a Vietnam War veteran, and Bubba says he was a hard worker, a dedicated family man, but he wasn't interested in a relationship with Jesus.
I've tried to talk to him before. He knows that me and Angie were Christ followers and everything, but wasn't having it.
He wasn't having it until he heard from Bubba's caddy, Ted Scott. Ted and Bubba's dad were friends. So the pastor who led Bubba's and Ted's weekly Bible study suggested that Ted write a letter to Bubba's dad.
And the letter said, your son loves you and he does everything for you. You've made him the man that he is. And, he loves Christ more than anything in the world. And he would love to see you in heaven with him and, all these things. And he said, P.S., if you ask him, you can ask the Lord into your heart right now just by saying this, and told him what he could say, and changes your whole life, takes away every bad thing you've done in your life. It'll take everything away from you, change your whole life.
Then one day on the phone, it became clear to Bubba that God had used the letter to pierce his dad's heart. It was the summer of 2010, just a few weeks after Bubba had won his first major tournament, and his dad started teasing Bubba, saying things like he'd better practice more.
So I said, Dad, I'm practicing. I just won. I'm trying hard. And he goes, no, because when I get to heaven, I'm going to be so good at golf. And so that hit home, but I tried to play it cool. I tried to act tough and act like didn't faze me what he said. And I said, Dad, look, heaven's great, but heaven's not going to be that good where you're better than me at golf.
Jerry Watson Sr. passed away in October of 2010. He didn't get to meet Bubba's and Angie's son Caleb or their daughter Dakota, but Bubba's confident that his father is in heaven with Jesus. And he's also confident that he'll be with his dad in heaven someday, all because Bubba and his dad trusted their life to Jesus Christ.
What about you? Do you know that you'll go to heaven when you die? Have you surrendered your life to Jesus? We can help. Just go to billygrahamradio.org and click on Grow Your Faith at the top of the page. That's billygrahamradio.org.
There may be a number of people named Bubba, but most of them weren't born with that name. How did Jerry Watson Jr. end up with his nickname Bubba? He'll tell us in just a minute.
You're listening to GPS, God, People, Stories, a podcast production of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association.
I heard about a clergyman who said to a boy who was using profanity, he said, "Son, do you know what becomes of little boys that use those kind of words?" And he said, "Yes, sir." He said, "They grow up and become golfers."
Billy Graham.
But golf to me has always been a parable of the Christian life. Golf is a game of recovery. The winner is not the one who makes no mistakes, but the man who has the courage and the skill to overcome his errors. Some shy away from Christianity because they know they cannot live perfect lives. But according to the Bible, The Christian life is not for perfect people. It's for people who are imperfect, like you and me. Jesus said, I came not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. A Christian is not one who is sinless, but one who has had sin forgiven. In Christianity, as in golf, the ideas of recovery. We may do wrong, we may fail. And many times we hit a bad shot. But the champion is the man that knows the secret of recovery after a bad shot and applies it to golf as well as life.
And now back to the hosts of GPS, Phil Fleischman and Jim Kirkland.
More than 50,000 people have turned out for the first 13 stops of the Decision America Tour with Franklin Graham. Franklin's holding a prayer rally in each state capital, and he's challenging Christians to boldly live out their faith at home, in public, and at the ballot box. All the details about the Decision America Tour and the vision behind it are at decisionamericatour.com.
Our guest on this episode of GPS has been Bubba Watson. Bubba is his nickname. His real name, Jerry Watson Jr. So where did Bubba come from? His dad.
So when I was born, I was real chubby in the face. So my dad said I looked like a football player. So called me Bubba.
Jim, do you have any nicknames?
Well, none that I can divulge with a microphone on. I done nothing really exciting or unusual, just that the fact that anybody who knew me before, let's say, the age of 18 or 19 would call me Jimmy. And I would just as quickly answer to Jimmy as I do Jim, because I was Jimmy until I got to college and decided that that was just not sophisticated enough. So I took the M and the Y off the back of it and became Jim. But I will answer to either name just as quickly as the other.
Yeah, and Jimmy's not too far from Jim, right?
No.
It's the same with me. About the only nickname I have is Phil, short for Philip. So that's all I've got is Phil.
Well, nothing very exciting on either one of our cases, but a very exciting story about how God has worked in the life of one Bubba Watson Jr., and we thank him for being our guest on this episode of GPS, God, People, Stories. We also want to thank the Afters for letting us use some of their music today. And we thank you for listening. GPS is on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, and BillyGrahamRadio.org. You can find us on Facebook by searching for Billy Graham Radio. I'm Jim Kirkland.
And I'm Phil Fleischman. GPS is an outreach of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. Always good news.